Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the bureaucratic juxtaposition of UFOs and the FBI, specifically looking at the year 1966. We are jumping right into a seriously wild era of mid-century paranoia. I mean, think about it. The space race was in full swing, the Cold War was freezing over, and Americans were constantly looking up at the skies. And when they saw things they couldn't explain, well, they demanded answers from a very cold, very bureaucratic government. Okay, so let's just dive right into this. Take a look at this. This is an actual, authentic FBI file cover from 1966. You can see that massive, dramatic red investigation stamp right on the front. This is file 62-HQ-83894. We're not talking about science fiction here. This is the literal, physical paperwork that the Bureau was shuffling around while the American public was basically losing its collective mind over flying saucers. Which honestly brings us to a really fascinating question. If an alien actually contacted you, would you tell the FBI? Seriously, I want you to jump down into the comments right now and let me know. Would you call the authorities? Because, as we're about to see, back in 1966, everyday citizens absolutely did just that. And the results? Well, they were pretty incredible. Now, check out this sheer contrast here. On one side, you've got these frantic, mainstream newspaper headlines screaming things like UFOs tracked by radar and saucers sighted over wide section. It's just absolute panic, right? But then, on the other side, look at this magazine from the AFSCA. It's got this super organized, almost corporate vibe to it. They were literally taking all that widespread, chaotic public panic and funneling it into a structured, highly organized movement. So to really get what's going on here, we need a primary definition of who these guys actually were. AFSCA stands for the Amalgamated Flying Saucer Clubs of America, Incorporated. They were this massive civilian UFO research organization operating out of Los Angeles, and they were most famous for publishing their official journal, Flying Saucers International. They're essentially the main characters in our story today, and they were generating so much noise that the FBI literally could not ignore the fallout. And this next piece just perfectly captures how they operated. You see this promotional stamp declaring, "Flying saucers are real," but the real story is right below that flashy graphic. It's that $3 price tag for 12 issues of their World Report. The AFSK was absolute genius at monetizing the UFO craze. They were taking all these anxious, terrified skywatchers and turning them straight into paying subscribers. Let's hit a really critical data point right now, 400. That is the exact number of light years to the alleged planet Correspondence. Now, to be clear, this was definitely not a scientific finding. This was a completely fantastical, yet incredibly specific claim that was published straight in the pages of the AFSK's magazine, and it was presented as absolute, undeniable fact to all of their readers. And the story gets even wilder when you actually read the magazine layout. They were publishing literal dispatches from someone called Master Kalen Lee Rattan, who was supposedly the head of the planet Correspondence. And how exactly were they getting these messages from 400 light years away? Oh, just via a special directional shortwave radio, broadcast directly to an Earthling named Bob Renault. I mean, you literally cannot make this stuff up. So let's just pause for a quick second. Would you pay $3 for a subscription to shortwave alien dispatches? Go ahead and drop a comment below. I really want to know if you would have bought into this massive 1966 pop culture phenomenon. Keep in mind, $3 was actual, real money back then. But here's the thing. Not everyone was just buying into this for fun. Listen to this genuine, real fear from a citizen living through that time. Quote, "With my limited idea of how communists operate, it strikes me it is backed by them." That's from Mrs. Florence C. Dow. And honestly, this captures the absolute dread of the era so perfectly. You had everyday citizens linking these local UFO clubs directly to Cold War Soviet paranoia. Check out Mrs. Dow's actual handwritten letter right here. This is from August 31st, 1966. She was a 63-year-old widow who just happened to stumble onto some of these app scam materials. She was so completely terrified that just requesting a flying saucer stamp might somehow align her with the Communist Party that she felt compelled to send the evidence directly to the director of the FBI himself, J. Edgar Hoover, just to clear her name. And Mrs. Dow was definitely not an isolated case. Take a look at this official FBI memo coming out of their Philadelphia division, dated October 3rd. A father, Mr. Jarvis H. Cooper, bought one of these AFSK magazines simply because his kid liked outer space. But after reading that whole Correspondence article, the father immediately reported it to the FBI. Why? Because he fully believed those alien dispatches were secretly pushing Communist Party propaganda. So you have these citizens who are genuinely, deeply terrified of some sort of alien communist mind control. And how exactly does the FBI handle it? Well, with the driest, most bureaucratic, textbook response you can possibly imagine. They said, "We do not evaluate or draw conclusions." That standard, incredibly bland dismissal was the literal brick wall that these terrified Americans just kept slamming into. Let's actually look at the paperwork itself. Here is J. Edgar Hoover's official reply sent back to Mrs. Dow on September 6th. The Bureau, quote, neither makes evaluations nor draws conclusions as to the character or integrity of any organization. Basically, Hoover is just entirely washing his hands of the AFSCA. So, case closed, right? Yeah, not quite. Because this totally robotic bureaucratic dismissal actively angered the public. Take a look at this letter from a guy named Paul L. Wright, sent to the FBI on October 9th. Look at how intense his wording is. He straight up accuses the Air Force of lying to the public about UFOs, and he boldly claims that hiding the truth puts the U.S. in a terrible position. He literally compares it to, quote, Nazi Germany in the 1930s. People were absolutely furious at the complete lack of transparency. And that brings us to another extremely critical data point in this explainer. $300,000. Now, in 1966 dollars, that is a massive, massive sum of money. Because while the FBI was busy sending out these little form letters telling terrified citizens that they didn't care at all about UFOs, another branch of the exact same government was quietly writing a very, very large check. The really crucial piece of the puzzle is right here on this FBI memo from October 19th. It officially confirms that the Air Force commissioned the University of Colorado, specifically a team led by physics professor Edward U. Condon, to conduct a highly in-depth study of flying saucers. And the estimated cost for all this research? $300,000. Which naturally leads me to ask you, does a $300,000 study contradict the government's constant public dismissals? I want you to write down your comments right now. Seriously, let's analyze this juxtaposition. The FBI is completely, totally ignoring a panicked public, while at the exact same time, the Air Force is spending an absolute fortune on serious academic research into the exact same topic. What do you think was actually going on behind closed doors? Let's just bring this all together by looking at this rapid-fire timeline of the late 1966 UFO bureaucratic headaches. So, August 31st, Mrs. Dow writes her terrified letter. September 6th, Hoover issues his ice-cold dismissal. October 3rd, the Philadelphia memo drops, detailing all those communist fears. October 9th, Wright literally compares the cover-up to Nazi Germany. And then, October 19th, the FBI passes around the memo about the $300,000 Air Force study. In a span of less than 2 months, the sheer volume of paperwork and the hours the FBI spent dealing with this national paranoia is just staggering. So we end with this final thought. Was the FBI truly, genuinely uninterested in the flying saucer phenomenon? Or were they simply overwhelmed by a panicked public that was absolutely demanding answers from the stars? It is such a fascinating look at this bizarre intersection of pop culture, Cold War fear, and massive government bureaucracy. Thank you so much for diving into this explainer with me today, and hey, keep looking up.